Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from, and welcome to another edition of Spring Office Hours. I'm your host, Dan Vega. Along with me, as always, well, not always, because you weren't here the last 2 weeks, but my good friend and colleague, DaShaun. DaShaun,
Hello.
how are you doing, my friend?
Hello. I'm good. I'm very good. I'm wonderful.
Look
at all these people from all over the world.
Yes, this is great to see.
How much fun is this?
Like I said, you were not around the last 2 weeks. You were a very busy traveling man. I want to say thank you to our two guest hosts, Greg Turnquist and Daniel. I don't want to mess your last name up, Daniel, but we had some really great episodes. Go back and check the archives. I talked to Greg about Spring in general, and I talked to Daniel about Spring security, and that was a lot of fun. So thanks to our two guest hosts. You were out traveling the world. You were at VMware Explore EU and Spring One Tour Tel Aviv.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about
Barcelona? Was amazing. The turnout was amazing. I got to see a lot of our community there, and it was a great turnout, great energy, lots of cool stuff happening.
Awesome.
I also got to work. I worked with somebody in Madrid, but it was cool to kind of like be in Spain, working with somebody else in Spain, working on some cool build pack stuff. That was fun.
Nice.
From there, I went to Spring One Tour Tel Aviv, and that was extra special. I got to follow Jürgen, one of the founders of Spring, and I got to follow him on stage, and that was really special for me. And I got to talk about Spring Boot 3 and all the cool stuff you can do with GraalVM. It was great.
Cool.
Loved it.
Cool. Well, speaking of Spring Boot 3, that's kind of our theme for today. Spring Boot 3 was released last week, so we're calling this Spring Boot 3 First Look. We're going to talk about Spring Boot 3, look through the release notes, answer any questions you have about Spring Boot 3, and that's kind of the plan for today. As always, we'll look through the calendar, see kind of what's new in the community, and take your questions. So if you have some questions about Spring Boot 3 or about anything in general when it comes to Spring, please go ahead and drop those in the comments, and we'll see if we can't get to them. Just looking here through the comments, we have, like you said, so many people joining us. Hello from Spain. Oh, Spain 2 and Spain 1. Brazil. Brazil is joining us. Hi from America. We have Italy. Hi, Luca. How are you? Greetings from Colombia. Hello, Spring friends. Hello from Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, right? Hello from England. And hello from Twitch. Germany.
That's awesome.
Germany. Love it. Ukraine. Nigeria. Finland. Bulgaria. Look at this, man. Wow. Love to see this. Hello from Minnesota where it's snowing. Ryan, I am in Ohio, so I understand your pain, but not to your extent, but I do get it.
Man.
Hello from Norway. Tunisia, sorry. India, our friend Ambu is here. Hello from France, from Russia. Our good friend Greg Turnquist. Hello, Greg. Thanks for joining us. Wow, we have just everyone here today. Hello from Morocco. Love to see this. The Spring community is everywhere. And I think we picked a really good time. This 3:30 slot on the EDT side, 2:30 your time. It seems though we get a much more diverse crowd from different time zones at this time. So this is working out great. The real Dan Vega ain't no fake. What a G. Thanks for the shout out.
Look at that.
I am the real Dan Vega. Our friend Benjamin's here. Hello from Uganda.
And more from Tunisia. Man, awesome. What fun.
Yeah.
What fun. What we always do first.
Yeah.
Look at like this machine is always going. The team is always working, and we can actually kind of keep tabs on what's coming, what's around the corner by looking at the calendar.
Let's do it.
Our second favorite place.
So we are down here in, this is not even showing. There we go. So you'll notice the beginning. So we are at, so just so we can kind of recap, we are at calendar.spring.io. We kind of take a look at this every week just to see what's happening in the Spring community. You'll see a whole bunch of stuff going on in the month of November. And as we get down here, we start to slow down. We are heading into, we had the holidays last week here in the US. You'll see a lot from now to the end of the year is going to kind of taper off because we've done a whole lot of releases beforehand. So obviously the big news, Spring Boot 3 came out last week, Spring Framework 6 the week prior, and everything that has needed to kind of catch up with those releases or stay in tune with those releases has happened. Here we have a couple more coming tomorrow. Spring Cloud Open Fane, Spring Cloud Release Candidate 3 for 2022. So that's exciting. That Spring Cloud release is kind of the last thing to happen, which is nice to see that catching up. So really not much on the release front. Yeah, don't have much else to say about that. How about you, DaShaun?
No, like this is where I go. I want to see what's coming out. I want to see what's new, and I want to take it for a spin. And this is where I go to find out.
Cool. I want to see. I do have a question popping up here. Do we need Hibernate validator dependency in Spring Boot 3.0? I was creating a project with JPA in Spring Boot 3.0 and got an error to include it in the class path. No, you should not need it, which I'll show you in a second because that is in the release notes. We'll take a look at that in a second. Awesome. Switching back to 2.7.6, remove the error. So if this is related to Jakarta specification. So yes, this is a Jakarta thing. This is kind of along those lines. So to start answering some of those questions, let's go here. Let's start with, there's a blog post on spring.io/blog. Spring Boot 3.0 goes GA. So there's some interesting tidbits in here. This release was the culmination of 12 months of work, over 5,700 commits by 151 different individuals. Do you think you've made 5,700 commits in your lifetime, DaShaun?
50,
That's a lot
yeah,
of
back when I
commits.
used to build Docker files, I'm sure that I did. Whenever I had to change something, I had to change across all the different things. I'm sure I've done 5,400 commits.
I mean, you're also a Kubernetes developer, so those YAML files need to get updated all the time. So yeah, I'm sure you have. But that is a lot of commits by 151 different people. So again, I'll echo what this blog post did. A massive thank you to everyone that contributed, especially those early adopters that provided feedback. I mean, that really helps us out, helps the team out as we're trying to move forward with it.
A lot of this community, we were getting a lot of folks, taking the RC releases and the milestone releases out and sharing their feedback. That was absolutely valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So from a Spring Framework 6 standpoint, Spring Framework 5 came out, 5 years ago? It's saying this is the first major revision of Spring Boot since 2.0 was released 4.5 years ago. It's also the first GA version of Spring Boot that provides support for Spring Framework 6 and GraalVM. So we'll talk about the highlights as we go. You can see it in here. Some baseline upgrades between Java 17, Jakarta EE 9 and 10. I'll get to that in a second because that may be a little confusing. Obviously, the big one, support for generating native images with GraalVM. We've talked about that on the show a lot. And the big one, improved observability with Micrometer and Micrometer tracing. So we'll get into each of these as we go through the release notes. Here is just kind of a thank you, and then there's a link to the release notes, which puts you over to here. All right, I'm just going to go through here, and you could feel free to kind of jump in and stop me if you want, DaShaun. So upgrading from Spring Boot 2.7. I will say this. There's a really good blog post by Phil Webb. This is back in May for preparing for Spring Boot 3. If you're going to upgrade to Spring Boot 3, there are some things that you should take a look at. This blog post should give you some really great information as far as that goes. I would say one of the things that it talks about too is moving to 2.7.x first. So if you're on like 2.2 or 2.3, don't try to jump to 3.0. Try to move up to 2.7 first. Try to move to Java 17. Those two right there, those incremental jumps will help you kind of find some things, and then you can kind of move to 3.0. But there's a blog post that has a lot of good information on. It's not just those two things. There are other things that you should be looking for. Things like deprecations. If we remove some things in 3.0, make sure you're not using them, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of upgrading. There's a little bit of information here about upgrading from 2.7. New and noteworthy, Java 17 baseline. So again, we've supported Java 17 for a while now, but now that we're on Spring Framework 6, this is the first time we're kind of requiring a minimum version of Java 17. So we currently do support Java 18 and 19 as well. So if you go to start.spring.io, you'll see that. But this is going to require a minimum of Java 17. And, I noted this in some of my release notes, but if you are coming from Java 8 to 17, you should be jumping for joy because you are getting so much in the performance improvements, security updates, speed, and then just a whole bunch of language enhancements that you can get your hands on. So if you're moving from 8 to 17, great. Even if you're moving from the last LTS, which was 11 to 17, a whole bunch of language improvements. So go ahead and take a look at that. That's got to be an exciting time for anybody jumping from there.
I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot of the language improvements. I couldn't tell you what's in Java 8, Java 11 versus Java 17. For me, it's all about performance. Yep. Just in the JVM, just the things that the JVM can do with performance and how it's doing. We have new options for garbage collection, so much faster.
Yeah,
so much faster. So even the stuff that I was writing years ago, just by upgrading it to Java 17, I'm getting all of that performance boost.
I did put together a small list because I knew I would be kind of asked about this, but like, hey, if you're on Java 8, what are some of the highlights from Java 19 to 17, or from Java 9 to 17? And some of the features that you can get right out by moving from that are things like JShell. You get local variable type inference using like the var keyword. There's an HTTP client, switch expressions, text blocks using multi-line strings, records, pattern matching, sealed classes, and a whole lot more. So those are just a few of the things that you're going to get by jumping from 9 to 17. So that's the Java 17 baseline support. Let me just see. I'm just looking through here.
Yeah, there's one question. There we go.
I would like to know why you have decided to release full why have you decided to release full compatibility with GraalVM in a new major version? I guess maybe this compatibility will appear in 2.x major version. No, so this will not appear in 2.x. So we had a Spring Native project, but that will not stick around. That's going away. That was really just to flesh out the work for what is now being brought, what was now brought into Spring Boot 3.0.
Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. The 2.x line had Spring Native, which is an experimental project. It was a dependency that you can include that would help GraalVM understand what we were building, provide the GraalVM those hints. But with Spring Boot 3, Spring Hibernate 6, not only do we upgrade, you've got a baseline of Java 17, but also for GraalVM, you've also got to be on 22.3. So we can get all the latest and greatest benefits that are available today. We have kind of, set that as the baseline. So as of today, we're on the latest and greatest GraalVM.
So yeah, right there you could see in the, well, just to back up a little too, Spring Boot 3 also works and has been tested with JDK 19. There's also a preview feature for some Loom stuff. Check out the Spring IO blog. There's a blog post on doing some things with Project Loom in JDK 19. So
let me ask the audience, if you have tried Project Loom or you plan to try Project Loom before the end of the year, let us know in the chat.
Cool. And then as DaShaun mentioned, Spring Boot for building native images, you're going to require GraalVM 22.3 or later and the native build tools plugin. We'll see. There's a way to jump to the documentation. There's a whole section in the reference docs about building native images, and it walks through all of that. So check out the reference docs for that. So here's what I want to talk about. Well, I'll talk about this first and then go into the Jakarta stuff. So as we looked at that calendar, there's a whole bunch of releases happening throughout the month, right? And that was, again, all of the projects in the ecosystem, being able to support Spring Boot 3. So bringing up the projects to kind of go alongside Spring Boot 3. So for instance, there is a Spring Data 2022, and that has support for if you want to build a native image, if you want, if you're using baseline of Java 17. So all of these projects were brought up to kind of Spring Boot 3 and Spring Framework 6. So I would take a look at each individual project, and I'm going to do I'm going to be creating some content on each of these. But you could see so for Spring Data, here's the general themes. Hey, we upgraded to Java 17, 6, Jakarta EE. We have ahead of time processing for GraalVM native images. Observability, we talked about, is a big theme throughout these projects, and it's adding instrumentation to each of the projects and the framework and Spring Boot underneath so that you don't have to. So this kind of comes out of the box, right? And then there's a whole bunch of new and noteworthy. We're not going to go through each of these projects because we would be here all day doing that. But these are all of the projects that were upgraded in this release. So I'm going to do some content on this. There's some exciting things that happened in Spring for GraphQL 1.1, along with things like observability and some new features. So check that out. Spring Security, there are a bunch of changes in Spring Security 6 that I want to talk about at some point. Most notably, the web security configure adapter, which I've been talking about over and over again over the last few months, is now deprecated. So it's not even in Spring Security 6. So now, if you're upgrading to Spring Boot 3 and using Spring Security 6, it's not even an option. You need to use the new component model by creating a bean of type security filter chain. We've done a bunch of content on that. Let me know if you have questions on that. So those are all the projects that we're kind of upgrading to as far as third-party libraries go. Cool. Yeah, looks like there's planning on using Loom soon. Great.
So just a reminder, ask your questions in the chat.
Yep.
We'll get to as many of them as we can. But if we don't get to it on today's session, we like to have them anyways to help us figure out what to talk about next time.
Yeah. Okay, so this was confusing me. So I did a little bit of research and asked the smart people on the Spring team about this to begin, so that I could be clear on this. You'll see that like we support Jakarta 9 and 10. So what does that mean? Like why are we supporting two different versions of Jakarta, right? So obviously we're making the move from Java X, to Jakarta X to Jakarta, wherever that namespace is in your code. So you'll need to migrate from Java X to Jakarta. But why are we saying that there's 9 and 10, right? So you'll see here, wherever possible, Jakarta EE 10 have been chosen. So it's a little confusing, but Spring Boot 3 had to upgrade to Tomcat 10.1, right? Since 10.0 was end of life already. And this means that Spring Boot or Tomcat 10.1 is dependent on Servlet 6.0, which comes in Jakarta EE 10. The goal now is to provide a set of EE providers in Spring Boot 3.0 as far as possible, while retaining that EE9 baseline for optional downgrades, things like Jetty 11, which is still using Servlet 5. So that's why you'll hear 9 and 10. Wherever we can, we are using 10. Wherever we can't be, we're using 9. And the reason, again, what this boils down to is we can support either 9 or 10 at runtime, right? But only 10 in a test that uses servlets for the time being. And this is because Spring provides servlet mocks using Servlet 6.0 baseline. And this restriction really only applies to when you're using mock-based servlets. And any test using something like test rest template will not be affected. So that's why you'll hear the, hey, we're using 9 in some places and 10 in the other. I hope that kind of clears some things up. So because of that, wherever possible, Jakarta EE 10 have been chosen. So we have things like Jakarta Persistence. We have Servlet 6. We have Jakarta Validation 3. So these are all the packages where we've kind of selected that, right? Then we've also upgraded to the latest stable releases of third-party jars wherever possible. And here are a whole list of notable upgrades. Some ones that I'll kind of pick out are like Groovy 4.0, Hibernate 6.1. So you're on like the latest version of Hibernate. You'll see Hibernate Validator 8.0. Jackson. The Jackson library is on 2.1.4. And then things like Micrometer and the R2 DBC is hit 1.0. So that's exciting. You'll see Tomcat 11 in here. I think Jetty's up here, Jetty 11, Timeleaf 3.1. So that was a lot to say. That's what's going on with kind of Jakarta 9 and 10 and what we're moving to, what we have moved to in Spring Boot 3.0. So I want to go back to a question that I saw here. So do we need Hibernate validator dependency in Spring Boot 3.0? So no, this should be here. So if you are pulling in Hibernate, So if you're using something like Spring Data JPA, this should be included. So you would get Hibernate 6.1 and the Hibernate validator.
So let's just do an example, right? Like if I go and I grab, I always add the actuator, and yeah, and I'm going to make it a Spring Web so I can just test it real quick. I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to make a Maven project with Spring Boot 3.
Can you share your screen then? I will unshare mine.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I guess should be Tomcat 10.1 in the release notes instead of 10, which is end of life. Right. I believe it is 10.1. If you look in the parent POM in the dependency list, it is 10.1.
Like, let's just take this for a screen. Let's add screen. How about this one? Right, easy to kind of validate. All right, I'm going to grab Spring Data JPA, Spring Boot Actuator, and Spring Web. Let's generate that guy. Let's call this generate. Cool, I get a project. Let's just replace the one that was there. Let's replace it. And let's jump into a terminal.
I feel like I'm in the Matrix.
Whoops. Let's do this. Whatever was there, it's not there anymore. And then I'll get that thing that we just did. And let's go in there and let's take a look. Oops. So now, I assume from the question that it was like, hey, it's asking me for this. I can't find it. We get NVNW, we get a wrapper with it. And yes, we love pair programming.
Yeah, so one thing you can do too, maybe you can do this while that's running. If you jump into the pom.xml, and then you go to the Spring Boot starter parent, so command click into that, which is at the top there.
Command click.
You should be able to command click. Are you on? I guess you are. Are you on Mac?
All right. Is that what I want to do?
Jump to dependency. I wonder why you can't command click. Maybe because it's resolving dependencies still.
Yeah. I can do it this way. Right.
There you go.
So I jumped into the parent. Let's just take a look.
So then if you look at Spring Boot dependencies.
I'm in Spring Boot dependencies.
Okay. So then if you go down, so you can see a list of all the things. So if you just do a quick search for Hibernate. So we can see Hibernate version is 6.1.5, and then the validator is 8.0.0 final. So that should be what we pull in. That's the specific version, because we're not going to, we don't declare a version of that. It gets transitively brought in with Spring Data JPA.
So for all of you that have been on the show, you notice I'm in a different room, and I'm on Wi-Fi, so maybe this is going to take a little bit longer than normal. So I apologize for that. Next show, I'll have something that can actually build something in a reasonable amount of time. But hopefully that answers the question. That kind of points to the answer. We shouldn't need it. We can jump back. I'll come back when this is all done. But yeah, that's an exercise that everybody can do. So I'll stop sharing. You can easily go and validate these kinds of simple questions from start.spring.io.
All right, we'll come back to that. So those are, we've talked about Java 17, Jakarta EE 9 and 10. Again, I mentioned this on the show. I think what I'm really excited about is these APIs are going to start to evolve now. Like I said, we're moving to Tomcat 10.1. All of these third-party libraries that kind of use Jakarta, and we get to start to evolve on all this stuff. So instead of sitting around and collecting dust as it has been over the last, 10 years. So that's exciting. Next up, GraalVM native image support. So we've talked a lot about this on the show. DaShaun, I'll let you kind of speak to this if you want. What are you excited about when it comes to GraalVM?
Well, first of all, GraalVM is just another awesome JVM. It's another option that you get to use. It's fast. So again, I like that performance side. So just by switching to the GraalVM, you're going to see some performance boost. Now the native support, it's one of the two modes that you get with the GraalVM. You can do the just-in-time compiling like you're used to with your OpenJDK or other hotspot flavors. But you also now get a ahead of time compilation. And what that's doing is it takes your code and it says, hey, here's all the places I can go. It looks at all the branches of all the things they can go to. In Spring Framework 6, it also provides all those hints. It says, hey, we're using reflection here. We're doing these things. And it analyzes and it says, this is all the places that the code could possibly go. It throws away the rest. It optimizes it and it only keeps the things that it needs. Keeps its little bits from the JVM that it needs for garbage collection, et cetera. And it gives you a native image, statically linked native image that you're running for whichever operating system and architecture that you built it on. So if I did it with my Mac, I'll have a Darwin version of this Intel or AMD, depending, or ARM64, depending on which kind of Mac you're on. But that native image, it kind of changes the paradigm. It changes what we're doing, right? With Java, when it was first introduced, it was like, hey, yeah, build it once. We had bytecode that we could run anywhere. Well, now we're saying, hey, well, maybe we don't want that. Maybe we have some other use cases where it's more important to have that fast startup time, that smaller footprint. That's what we're doing with this native image.
Is this the first time GraalVM was introduced?
No, we talked about it a little bit earlier. We started with the Spring Native dependency, the experimental project in the 2.7 branch that allowed us to kind of go and do this GraalVM native image work. You can use the GraalVM. You can use the GraalVM as just a regular JVM for all of your stuff.
I was going to say too, we talked about those requirements earlier. GraalVM 22.3 and the native build tools plugin 0.9.17 or later. If you're curious about GraalVM without Spring, try to give that a run. Just write a simple Java application with a public static void main and a simple, print line, and use GraalVM to go ahead and compile a native image of just that simple class. And then maybe build upon that with just Java examples. And you can start to understand what GraalVM is doing. And then you might see at scale what the Spring team was able to do with introducing GraalVM support into the Spring ecosystem. So
hopefully that answers that question. Use the GraalVM. I highly recommend it. It's a great JVM. Use it for your day-to-day. It's worth it. It's fast.
What about Spring Cloud Sleuth? Was it finally was moved to Micrometer? Yes, we'll talk about that in a minute. Don't know anything about that one. Which type of apps will be suitable to port to GVM? I'm quite lost at that point.
Which types of apps will be suitable to port to the GraalVM?
Native images.
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is one of the questions that a lot of people are asking. It's like, hey, what if I have this ability to take my application and have a smaller memory footprint, a smaller footprint on disk, and it starts up faster? Why wouldn't I want to do that? Well, the JVM provides a lot of really cool things. Java's been around for a long time, and the JVM can actually do a lot of really interesting things for us. It can do a lot of optimizations for us at runtime. So the performance that you get, that startup, that performance metrics that you get, those are going to be consistent from startup to the end. There's no optimizations that come after startup. The other thing is there are some types of workloads, depending on how maybe garbage collection is handled. There are some types of workloads that are going to find themselves operating better with a JVM, with a just-in-time compiler versus the ahead-of-time compilation. And this is just one of those trade-offs. There's no magic scenario. There's not a nice diagram that says, oh, if your app does this, then it does this, use this. it's going to require you to test and evaluate. One of the main use cases why the Spring team went down this path and supported this path is because of these modern architectures and the serverless, those function types of workloads that need to scale up quickly. They need that fast startup time. A lot of these workloads that are running in the cloud, those milliseconds matter. So some of those workloads have those types of needs, and they're very bound in what they need to deliver.
Great answer. When startup time is cut from 30 seconds to sub-second time and you're running 1,000 instances in the cloud, you'll prune that total startup time by 8 hours. Imagine saving 8 hours on your cloud bill. So yeah, same thing as savings. It's all about the Benjamins, baby.
Yep.
Saving money on that cloud bill. To use GraalVM is not needed to make a lot of extra annotations.
No, part of the work that we've done with Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 is take away that need. Make it so that what you get out of the box is included out of the box. So all the hints and things that you might need to provide with other frameworks, all those things are included with your Spring Framework and Spring Boot.
Do you think, is yours up and running? Do you think we can just show a quick creation of a native build there? Is yours done downloading the internet?
Let's see. I have test failures. So I'll share. Let's go. Let's do it live. Where's my screen? Let's see what happened.
Oops, sorry.
All right. So what happened here? Y'all saw what happened. We didn't do anything special. Failed to start. Configure data source URL. Oh, I grabbed Spring Data JPA, but I didn't give it anything.
You didn't include like H2?
Nope. So let's do that.
So throw H2 on there as a dependency.
Yeah. And instead of doing it again, I'm just going to go in here and
yep.
It's in there somewhere.
You could just copy the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Boink. And then let's run it again. Boom, boom. Just do the clean install. Let's
Hold on.
go ahead and get rid of this.
Yep, I'm working.
Thank you.
Gotta love spam.
Yes.
I spend my days fighting spam these days. In the Spring community, we've been getting a lot of them.
So, answered our first question. We did it live. We were just making sure that, hey, I didn't need to bring in any other Hibernate validator. That was the original question. I get it out of the box, so we should be good to go. So that's all I did. I didn't do anything special. I didn't make anything. I just have an application.
Yeah, if you want to go into external libraries and you in that list, just do a search for Hibernate. You could do like command F and just start typing. There you go.
Boom.
So yeah.
I see commons and core. Those are the ones that I'm bringing in.
Core, does it not bring that in?
So it's not bringing anything in. It's not bringing in the validator, but it's also not failing.
Yeah, that should. I thought that brought that in by default.
I think it's really green if I need it. But let's go back here. This is my default interface, right? Whoops. Yeah, we used to have.
Oh, I totally forgot. Yes. So we used to bring it in with Spring Web. I forgot about the validation API. So we used to bring that in with Spring Web.
Yep.
And now you need to include that as the extra dependency.
And we talked about that on a previous.
Yes, we did. I just had like a complete missed that one. But yes, so let's bring that dependency into your project. It's just the starter validation. Yep. Yeah, we've talked about this before.
And go. Right on. So this is regular. This is your normal flow, right? We're going and we're making changes. We change our comm, we rebuild our stuff, and it takes a little bit of time. It's running the tests. It's going to do some stuff with H2 in the background, and that's how. 21 seconds. Cool. That's not a really big, turnaround time. Pretty easy enough to do. I can do my Spring Boot run. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to run my tests. But then when it's done, it's going to start up. Cool. So, hey, 3.77 seconds. Easy peasy. Now, if I wanted to do something special, actually, I don't have Docker running.
You could just do a native without.
Yeah, I can do -p native compile.
Yep. So to answer the question from before, is there any annotations that I need to add into my application to do this? The answer is no. So there is, if you start doing some things that the GraalVM compiler can't get to, if you start doing your own reflection, proxies, that kind of thing, then we might have to, if you have a third-party library that doesn't have support for this yet, then this might be something you need to do. But out of the box, the Spring team has gone through the portfolio projects and was able to do that wherever it needed to. So all DaShaun had to do was go ahead and run the native profile and run the native command to compile it. And now it's going to create a native image in the target folder, and you'll be able to run that as a native executable.
Yeah. Now, you can see this is taking a little while. On my little humble 2020, I think I can even show that. My little humble Mac, 16 gigs of memory. It takes a little while. Plus, we're doing the streaming and all the stuff. It takes a little while. There are other ways of handling this. We can offload some of that, but this is not your normal mode. You're not going to want to be doing this native compilation every time that you're in your inner loop. You're not going to be wanting to do this because it takes a long time.
You're just running your application normally as you would locally in development mode to kind of test it out. Once you check this in somewhere, you probably have a CI/CD process that takes care of this for you.
So this takes a while.
So I'm going to bring up another question to the answer that you gave. Thank you. I was afraid to port an app that will perform much better with the JDK OVM. The Lambda Cloud native example gives me a hint. And as you said, DaShaun, this is where you have an idea of what applications work best for what workloads, but test it out. The JDK might perform better on an application that has high throughput, right? Because of all the things that you mentioned before. So this is where, giving it a test run in your environment may help out. But what about monolithic classic apps, non-clustered and long running? Keep it on the JDK is a wise decision.
I mean,
it's not broke.
It's not broke. Yeah, that's a good idea. Upgrade it, keep it current, right? But yeah, if it's something where you're not going to get a lot of bang for the buck, you can guess based on your experiences. Yeah, there's no need.
What about the relation between Spring Boot 3 and Liquid Base? Would you please give us an example of how to generate difference of change log? I do not know the answer to that one.
Give us an example of how to generate difference of change log.
Are you asking
just for a
liquid base or? Yeah, I think we'll need a little bit more information on that.
Yeah.
If I select native in IntelliJ profile, already be compiling natively, right?
So that profile is included in the parent POM, which we looked at earlier. I think I can go and jump up.
See, I think they're saying somewhere in IntelliJ you can change the Maven profile and hit compile, like probably from your Maven tools.
Yep.
Yeah.
This.
Yep.
Yes. So then that native profile will be available, but you'll still, for the native compilation, for what we're doing here, that AOT compilation, you've got to then choose the native compile instead of just a regular compile.
Cool.
So yeah, it takes a little while on my little laptop.
Just wanted to say I really love your videos. Thank you very much for your work. Awesome. Thank you.
I love your videos too.
Oh, I was talking about yours. Love your videos. Oh, that is thank you so much. I hit 20,000 subscribers last week on YouTube. So thank you to all 20,000 of you. That was pretty cool to hit. So I appreciate that.
Big milestone.
Yeah.
I'm rocking the, I think I hit 40 a couple weeks ago.
Hey, 0 to 100 is really the hardest one to hit. It takes a little bit of time. They all get a little bit easier because you get a little bit better at it. So.
Yes. Otto, I did change my theme just for you. When I was last in front of an audience, it was on the big screen. I needed to have it light theme. I normally am dark theme.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like to code in dark mode, but anytime I'm presenting, as you said, when you're on a big screen, it's usually easier to be in light mode. But no matter what I'm using, someone is going to say, I wish you would switch your theme to the exact opposite thing. So I always get that.
That's okay.
Okay. Do you want to show anything else here? Do you want me to jump back?
No, that's still going. Like we can jump.
Okay. So that's GraalVM. The next thing in the release notes here, the log4j2 enhancements. I thought this was pretty cool. I'll just show this off, but profile specific configuration. So if you jump into the documentation, you have profile specific configuration, which is pretty cool. So you have in your log4j2 configuration, you can have a Spring profile and then have a name. So it could be the name of a profile. It could be either or, it could be anything but. So you can have a profile and say, this is the specific log configuration I want to use for that profile. Because you may want to be a little bit more verbose or something in a development environment or in a production environment. So pretty cool to see that. There's also some environment properties lookup. So you can basically include that in your logging configuration. And then the ability to support a number of system properties. So pretty cool stuff for that. Just coming back to this about native Maven profile, it's going to generate a container image directly or a jar for using together GraalVM locally.
That is a great question. You've got options.
There are two modes.
Yep, you've got options. So what I'm doing, the command that I ran on my laptop, that native compile, it's going to create a statically linked binary. So not a jar file, a statically linked binary, an executable, if you will, that I can run on this Darwin Intel-based laptop. It will not work on an ARM64-based laptop or a Linux machine. It's just for this architecture and this operating system. I have the option of doing the typical -P native Spring Boot image build or build image that will generate using a build pack. It'll generate a container, an OCI image, excuse me, that we can use for Kubernetes or Docker or whatever. So you have an option.
Cool. Oh, you are doing great work with Spring Boot. When are you going to talk about the REST API with? We will get that on our list. That is definitely something we should talk about. Documenting your APIs, things like OpenAPI, Swagger. Yeah, those are some things we can definitely.
And REST docs. Don't forget REST docs.
REST docs 3.0 is in that list somewhere.
Yeah, I'm still torn. I know that Swagger and the Open API spec it works. I still find myself leaning towards REST docs and building my documentation with my tests and providing my API that way.
Cool. All right. Question: what command should we use to generate a Docker container with a native image? Just as DaShaun said, whether you're using Maven or Gradle, there's a specific command for that.
Yeah.
So you can generate a Docker image without native, right? So he's using Maven right now. So Spring Boot build image will generate a container, but it's that -p saying, hey, use the native profile. And now you still run that same build image command, goal, if you will, in Maven.
So yeah, my laptop is frozen, but this is my typical MVNW Spring Boot build image. You can do this with the Maven plugin for your Spring projects.
And there's a Gradle equivalent.
Yep. So error occurred on some of those, but that's the command. This one here.
And so that's without native. So with just regular Spring Boot, you can generate a Docker container from that. And then the -p native says, hey, switch to the native profile, and you're running the same command. So, oh, this is exciting. I have wanted a reason to talk about this. So Kadir, you win a prize. I don't know what prize it is. I don't have any prizes to give away, but I did want to talk about that. So, oh, did you take that off? There we go. So there you go, P native. So I'm going to jump back to the other comment here. What do you guys, AWS Lambda Snap Start feature, a new feature that was released recently, supposedly improves cold start by 90%. So I actually was so excited to see this last night. Let's go ahead. Let me grab this link because I added it to my newsletter, so I know where this link is. If you haven't seen this, there is an accelerate your Lambda functions with Lambda Snap Start. Basically improves the cold start of your Lambda functions, specifically for the Java community. So this was a really cool announcement that came out of reInvent last night, which was cool to see. I actually gave it a whirl. I gave it a spin. I did it on a Hello Lambda function on my AWS console. It's available in specific regions. So my region of Ohio was available. Made a couple changes, and the cold start time was cut in half, which was really cool to see. Now, the one thing I will say against this is that it's still only for the Corretto image, which is Java 11. So you still have to run on Java 11 because that is the runtime that AWS supports. With GraalVM, Spring Cloud Function, Spring Boot 3, I can use Java 17 and compile down to a native image and use a custom runtime and use all of the latest goodies, if you will, on AWS. So I'm really excited about this. Doesn't completely replace the ability to use what's new in Spring Boot 3, but exciting to see because it's free. It's out of the box. You just have to change some configuration in there. But again, that's for AWS specifically. One of the things that I went through with Spring Cloud Function is you get to build these functions in a consistent programming paradigm, if you will, and you could deploy those functions to AWS, to Microsoft Azure functions, to Google Cloud. And so in those cases, those other platforms, you'll still need a way to go ahead and do that. But I'm excited about that announcement and looking forward to digging into that a little bit more. Okay. What's the minimum JDK version for Spring Boot 3? We said that earlier, but that's 17. So you need to be on at least 17. Have you got any examples where a multi-stage build Docker file is used to build a GraalVM native container image that could run on a Linux server?
No, I don't have an example. I avoid Docker files with
Yeah.
everything that's in my soul. There's lots of scar tissue throughout my experience where dealing with Docker files has caused me pain and suffering. So I use build packs. And yeah, so you get that out of the box. I don't have an example. I'm sure I could find one for you. So thank you for asking the question. I will find one and I'll see if I can bring one up.
Cool. Just check on time. Yeah, we're coming up against to it. Just go through a couple more things. So improved constructor binding detection. This is a nice little feature. So when you're using constructor bound configuration properties, the add constructor binding annotation is no longer required. So like if you have a record type that you're using for configuration properties, you don't need to add the add constructor binding annotation any longer. So again, for most users, this will allow for a simpler configuration properties class. However, if you do need it and you need to inject beans into the constructor, you can add in an @autowired annotation. Micrometer, big change in Spring Boot 3, Spring Framework 6. So there used to be a project, well, there still is a project, it's just not going to be used going forward, which is Spring Cloud Sleuth. That was tracing. So when we talk about observability, we're really talking about kind of the 3 pillars of observability, which are logging, metrics, and tracing, and more specifically, distributed tracing. So we used to have, the Spring Cloud Sleuth for distributed tracing. We have the actuator, which brings in a bunch of metrics for us in our Spring Boot app. But now it's all kind of combined into this simple single API and Micrometer for observations. So the nice thing is the entire framework, and whether it's Spring Framework 6, Spring Boot, have instrumented a lot of the kind of core of the framework with this API. So it's an API that Spring is using, and it's an API that you can use in your own code as well. So this is a big change. There's a lot to learn here. I would say for more details, see the new observability section of the documentation. This is a great place to start. Talks about what observability is, how you can use this API in your own code. One thing I didn't understand, the difference between low and high cardinality key values. Notes it right here. Hey, low cardinality tags will be added to metrics and traces, while high cardinality tags will only be added to traces. So that's good to know. Some really good stuff here in the documentation. If you want observability for JDBC and R2 DBC, you need to configure a separate project. I did this last night. I actually brought in this JDBC project, and now I got a whole bunch of instrumentation for JDBC, so I could see, exactly how long a particular query took, what that query was, what the result set was. So that was really exciting to see. So I would say start here, observability, then you have loggers. Metrics goes into all the things about metrics and the different monitoring systems that you can use, and goes into tracing and how Micrometer tracing is now going to facilitate that. So there's a lot here. We've spent an episode already talking to Jonathan about this. We could spend another episode going through kind of how to use a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I would say start with the documentation. There's a lot to go into here.
Can you say hi to Dan?
Hi.
And everybody say hi, Spring fans.
Hi, hello. And then there's some miscellaneous changes down here. I don't know if I noticed any that I wanted to talk about. Again, deprecations in Spring Boot 3.0. So these are important to understand. But yeah, that is the release notes. It would be nice if you made some videos with demos. That is coming, my friend. That is what I am working on.
Awesome.
About observability, yes. There's a lot that goes into that. I've been trying to wrap my head around some of it too, because there's so many different tools to like visualize this data. Understanding what each of these tools does is important. So I think that's kind of half the battle. And then understanding what is already instrumented for you and what you need to instrument yourself. So we will get more and more into that as we go. Again, this was kind of Spring Boot 3 first look, not last look. The first look.
Wonderful.
All right. Any other questions?
I think we got to all the questions. I'm doing a quick scan, and I think we got to all the questions that were asked. And we've learned that it would be nice to put the questions up on the screen so we have them. They're in the recording. So if we don't get to them, we get to them next time. Event-driven architecture with Spring. Yep, we're gonna have you covered on that.
Yeah, there's I would say if you're in the Spring world and you want to stick in the Spring world, check out Spring Cloud Stream. That is a really great project that kind of simplifies what the different bindings are that you're using. So if you're using multiple things, like maybe you have Kafka in one instance and RabbitMQ and some event hub somewhere else, Spring Cloud Stream kind of brings that all together in a simple, as Spring projects do, kind of simplifies things for you. So check out Spring Cloud Stream, and there's a bunch of really great documentation and some tutorials on that.
Awesome. Well, this is good. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back. I missed you, man.
A little jealous of the shows that I didn't get to be a part of, but yes, it's good to be back. Thank you everybody for showing up and joining in. Great questions across. Hopefully it was valuable. And yeah, stay tuned.
We will be back next week. So next Tuesday at 3:30, we have to figure out a topic for that. We have a couple in mind. We'll narrow it down. But yeah, we'll put together the rest of the shows for the rest of the year, probably be out the last week around Christmas. And then we'll get back to it in the new year. We have some exciting plans for the new year that we're not going to talk about yet, but we'll get into. But yeah, so stick around. Again, go over to the Tanzu Developer Center, look for Spring Office Hours. You can see a list of all of the past episodes, as well as find out what's coming next. So we'll go ahead and get those scheduled out for the rest of the year and the topics that we want to cover. If you have topics that you want us to cover, go ahead and reach out to us. You can find us on Twitter, at DaShaun, at the real Dan Vega. DaShaun, good to see you again, my friend. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next week.
Bye.